The story of Family Guy begins not in a boardroom at Fox Broadcasting Company, but in the dorm rooms and animation studios of the Rhode Island School of Design. Seth Woodbury MacFarlane, born on October 26, 1973, in the small New England town of Kent, Connecticut, was already showing signs of the creative genius that would later captivate millions. As a child, Seth wasn't just doodling stick figures in notebooks during class. No, he was creating complex characters, developing storylines, and dreaming about bringing his creations to life through animation. His parents, Ronald Milton MacFarlane and Ann Perry Sager, recognized this spark early on. His father worked as a prep school teacher, while his mother held positions in college admissions offices, environments that fostered education and creativity. Growing up with his younger sister Rachel, who would later become a voice actress herself, Seth was surrounded by an atmosphere that encouraged artistic expression. Seth's family roots run deep in American history, tracing back to the Mayflower passenger William Brewster. This New England heritage would later influence the fictional setting of Family Guy in Quahog, Rhode Island, a location that feels authentically New England in every detail, from the accent patterns to the local brewery that becomes Peter's workplace. When Seth attended the Rhode Island School of Design, known as RISD, he wasn't just another student trying to figure out his path. He was a man on a mission, studying animation with the kind of dedication that suggested he knew exactly where he was headed. During his time at RISD, Seth created a series of independent films that would become the foundation stones for what would eventually evolve into Family Guy. These weren't just class projects he threw together the night before they were due. These were carefully crafted pieces of animation that showcased his unique voice and vision. One of these films was called The Life of Larry, a thesis project that Seth completed during his senior year. The film featured a character named Larry and his anthropomorphic dog, Steve. And if those character archetypes sound familiar, well, they should. Larry was essentially an early version of Peter Griffin, and Steve was the prototype for Brian, the Griffin family's martini-drinking intellectual canine companion. The film caught the attention of someone very important, a professor who saw something special in Seth's work and took the initiative to submit it to Hanna-Barbera Productions, the legendary animation studio behind classics like The Flintstones and Scooby-Doo. This submission would change Seth's life forever. He was recruited right out of college during the Senior Film Festival by development executive Ellen Cockrell and President Fred Seibert. They didn't just offer him any position. They hired him based specifically on his writing content, rather than just his animation ability, making him one of only a handful of people brought into Hanna-Barbera purely for their writing talent. At Hanna-Barbera, which would later become Cartoon Network Studios, Seth found himself immersed in what he described as an old-fashioned Hollywood structure. He worked on several shows that 90s kids remember fondly, including Johnny Bravo, Dexter's Laboratory, Cow and Chicken, and I Am Weasel. Johnny Bravo became particularly significant in Seth's development as a creator. Unlike some of the other shows at the studio, Johnny Bravo utilized a script writing process that allowed Seth to develop his own style more freely. During his time working on these shows, Seth met voice actors and performers who would later become crucial to Family Guy's success. He encountered Adam West, the actor who would later voice the mayor of Quahog and become one of the show's most beloved recurring characters. He met Jack Sheldon of Schoolhouse Rock fame, absorbing lessons about musical comedy and timing that would inform the numerous musical numbers that would become a Family Guy trademark. But Seth wasn't content to just work on other people's shows. He had bigger ambitions. He created a follow-up short to The Life of Larry called Larry and Steve in 1996. This 7-minute short refined the concepts from his thesis film, featuring a middle-aged character and his talking dog getting into various misadventures. The short was sophisticated enough in its humor and animation that executives at Fox Broadcasting Company took notice. When MacFarlane pitched his concept to Fox, he didn't walk into the meeting with a polished presentation created by a team of animators. No, he created a 7-minute presentation reel entirely by himself at home, hand-drawing every single frame. Imagine the dedication that required. While other aspiring show creators might have pitched concepts with storyboards and verbal descriptions, Seth showed up with actual animation that demonstrated exactly what his vision looked like in motion. Fox executives Gary Newman and Dana Walden watched Seth's presentation, and they were impressed enough to offer him something rare, $50,000 to create a pilot episode. Now, $50,000 might sound like a lot of money, and it certainly was for a young animator fresh out of college. But in television terms, especially for animation, it was a relatively modest budget. Seth would have to be resourceful, creative, and absolutely committed to making every dollar count. He spent 6 months hand animating the 15-minute pilot, working obsessively to bring the Griffin family to life. This wasn't some rushed job. Every frame was carefully crafted, every joke meticulously timed, every character design refined until it perfectly captured Seth's vision. The pilot introduced viewers to the Griffin family: Peter, the well-meaning but often clueless father; Lois, his patient but occasionally exasperated wife from a wealthy family; Meg, their socially awkward daughter; Chris, their good-natured but dim-witted son; Stewie, their genius infant with plans of world domination; and Brian, their talking dog who walked upright and had more common sense than the rest of the family combined. The family dynamic was immediately apparent: dysfunctional yet loving, absurd yet somehow relatable. Peter's voice was based on a security guard Seth had overheard while studying at RISD. The way this guard talked, his distinctive New England accent and speech patterns, stuck with Seth and became the foundation for one of television's most recognizable voices. After reviewing the pilot, Fox gave the green light for a full season. Family Guy was picked up for 13 episodes, and the premiere date was set for something incredibly special. The show would air immediately following Super Bowl 33 on January 31st, 1999. This was one of the most coveted time slots in all of television. The Super Bowl regularly draws over 100 million viewers, and having your show premiere in that post-game slot meant instant exposure to a massive audience. It was the television equivalent of a red carpet introduction to America. That first episode, titled Death Has a Shadow, introduced the world to Peter Griffin's antics when he gets drunk at a stag party and loses his job, then lies about it while accidentally receiving welfare checks that he uses to buy extravagant items for his family. The premiere episode rating was solid, benefiting from that Super Bowl lead-in, but Family Guy's journey was far from smooth sailing. In fact, the show's history is one of the most tumultuous in television, involving not one, but 2 cancellations and subsequent revivals. After the initial Super Bowl preview, the rest of the first season began airing in April 1999, and the show struggled to find its audience. Fox, never known for its patience with new shows, shuffled Family Guy around the schedule, moving it to different time slots where it competed against established hits on other networks. The show finished its first season and got renewed for a second, but ratings continued to fluctuate. After the second season aired between 1999 and 2000, Fox made the decision to cancel the show. Just like that, Family Guy was off the air. But here's where the story gets interesting, because Family Guy refused to die. Fox briefly brought the show back, ordering a third season, but the rating struggles continued, and in 2002, Family Guy was canceled again. This time, it seemed final. 3 seasons, roughly 50 episodes, and then nothing. The show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, had to move on, but something unexpected happened during Family Guy's absence from primetime television. Fox had licensed the first 50 episodes to Cartoon Network's Adult Swim programming block, the late-night lineup that aired shows aimed at adult audiences. Adult Swim began airing Family Guy, reruns, and something magical occurred. The ratings were through the roof. Viewers who had missed the show during its original run, or who had watched occasionally, but never quite made it appointment viewing, suddenly discovered Family Guy in these late-night slots. They watched episode after episode, discovering the show's unique brand of humor, its cutaway gags, its pop culture references, its musical numbers, and its willingness to push boundaries. At the same time, Fox released the first 3 seasons on DVD, and something unprecedented happened for an animated series. The DVDs sold like crazy. We're talking about sales figures that shattered expectations, with season sets selling over 2.2 million copies in just the first year. This wasn't just successful for a canceled show, this was successful by any measure. Fox executives, who had written off Family Guy as a failed experiment, suddenly took notice. Here was a show that couldn't find an audience on their network, yet was dominating Adult Swim's ratings and flying off shelves in DVD format. The numbers were impossible to ignore. The message was clear: There was a substantial, passionate audience for Family Guy. They just needed to be able to find it. In February 2004, Seth MacFarlane confirmed in an interview that Family Guy would resume production. On May 1st, 2005, Family Guy returned to Fox with its fourth season premiere, an episode cleverly titled North by North Quahog. The episode poked fun at its own cancellation and unlikely revival, with Peter listing off all the failed Fox shows that would have to end before Family Guy could come back. The show had a new Sunday night time slot paired with other Fox animated programs, creating a powerful animation block. This time, Family Guy wasn't going anywhere. The ratings were solid, the audience was engaged, and Fox, having learned its lesson about canceling the show too quickly, committed to keeping Family Guy on the air. From 2005 onwards, Family Guy has been a mainstay on Fox, becoming the network's second longest running program, only behind The Simpsons. As of November 2025, over 445 episodes have aired across 23 seasons. That's an astounding longevity for any television show, but especially remarkable for one that was canceled twice in its early years. The show has been renewed through season 24, ensuring that Family Guy will continue to air for the foreseeable future. When you think about it, Family Guy has now been on the air continuously for over 20 years since its revival, far longer than many of the shows it parodies or references. Seth MacFarlane's role in Family Guy cannot be overstated. Not only did he create the show, but he also provides the voices for four of the main characters: Peter Griffin, Brian Griffin, Stewie Griffin, and Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin family's oversexed neighbor. MacFarlane also voices recurring characters like Tom Tucker, the local news anchor, and Carter Pewterschmidt, Lois's wealthy father. The decision to voice multiple main characters himself wasn't born out of ego or a desire to save money on voice actors. MacFarlane had such a specific vision for how these characters should sound and behave that he felt it would be easier to voice them himself, rather than try to communicate his vision to someone else. His choice has resulted in some of television's most iconic voices. Peter's distinctive New England accent, Brian's intellectual and slightly condescending tone, Stewie's upper-class British accent mixed with his infantile yet sophisticated vocabulary. These voices are instantly recognizable and have become part of pop culture. The voice of Peter Griffin, as mentioned, was inspired by that security guard Seth overheard at Rusty, but it's become so much more than an impression. Peter's voice carries the weight of his character, bumbling yet lovable, crude yet somehow innocent in his intentions. When Peter speaks, you hear someone who means well but consistently makes the worst possible decisions. Brian's voice, on the other hand, is essentially Seth's natural speaking voice, or at least a version of it. Brian is often seen as the voice of reason in the Griffin household, the one character who approaches situations with logic and rationality, even if his pretentious intellectualism sometimes gets in the way. Then there's Stewie, arguably the show's breakout character. Stewie's voice is based on the legendary actor Rex Harrison, particularly his performance in the 1964 musical film My Fair Lady. There's a theatrical quality to Stewie's speech patterns, a sophisticated enunciation that seems wildly inappropriate coming from a baby, and that's exactly what makes it so funny. In the early seasons, Stewie was portrayed as a genuinely evil character, obsessed with killing his mother Lois and taking over the world. He would build elaborate contraptions, develop complex schemes, and monologue about his plans in that distinctive voice. As the series progressed, Stewie's character evolved. The murderous tendencies and world domination plots gradually faded into the background, and Stewie became more of an eccentric genius baby, exploring his identity and forming a deep friendship with Brian. This evolution has been somewhat controversial among longtime fans, with some preferring the evil genius Stewie of the early seasons, but the character development has allowed for different types of storytelling and comedy. The other main voice actors bring their own essential contributions to the show. Alex Borstein voices Lois Griffin, and her performance brings a grounded quality to the often chaotic Griffin household. Lois's voice, which Borstein has said is based on one of her cousins, has that distinctive Long Island, New York sound, reflecting her upper-class Pewterschmidt family background. Borstein also voices several other characters, including Asian reporter Trisha Takanawa, Loretta Brown, who was Cleveland's first wife, and Lois's mother, Babs Pewterschmidt. Borstein was actually working on MAD-TV when she was asked to provide a voice for the Family Guy pilot. She had never met MacFarlane and hadn't seen any of his artwork. She was performing in a stage show at the time where she played a character whose voice she had based on a cousin, and that voice became the foundation for Lois. Seth Green voices Chris Griffin, Peter and Lois's teenage son. During his audition, Green did an impression of the character Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs, which apparently impressed MacFarlane enough to offer him the role. Chris is essentially a younger version of Peter, sharing his father's general lack of intelligence and common sense, but with occasional moments of unexpected insight or talent. The character is overweight, awkward, and struggles socially, but he's portrayed with enough sweetness and innocence that viewers can't help but root for him. Green also voices Neil Goldman, one of Chris's classmates, and occasional other characters. The role of Meg Griffin has an interesting history. In the first season, Meg was voiced by Lacey Chabert, probably best known at the time for her role on the TV show Party of Five. Chabert voiced Meg for the first production season of 15 episodes, though interestingly, she was never credited on screen due to a contractual agreement. When the show was briefly canceled and then renewed, Chabert was unavailable to continue in the role due to her other commitments and schoolwork. That's when Mila Kunis auditioned for the part. Kunis was only 14 years old when she auditioned, though she told the casting directors she was about to turn 18, a small lie that she's since admitted to publicly. When Kunis auditioned, MacFarlane called her back, but gave her notes to speak more slowly and enunciate more clearly. Kunis worked on these adjustments and won the role, a role she's now played for over 20 years. Her portrayal of Meg has become iconic, even as the character has become the frequent target of abuse and neglect from her family, a running gag that has generated its own share of controversy over the years. The production process for each Family Guy episode is extensive and time-consuming. Unlike live-action shows that can film an episode in a matter of days, animation requires a lengthy production timeline. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months from initial concept to final completion. Yes, you read that right. 10 months for a single 22-minute episode. The process begins in the writer's room, where Seth MacFarlane oversees a team of writers pitching ideas and crafting scripts. The scripts go through multiple revisions before being finalized, with jokes being tested, rewritten, and refined. Once a script is approved, storyboard artists create a visual representation of each scene, essentially a comic book version of the episode that shows the camera angles, character positions, and basic movement. After the storyboards are completed, the voice actors record their lines. Interestingly, the voice recording often happens relatively early in the production process, giving the animators actual dialogue to work with, rather than trying to animate to a script. The recording sessions can be interesting affairs, with Seth MacFarlane sometimes recording dialogue for multiple characters in the same episode, switching between Peter's voice and Stewie's voice and Brian's voice, sometimes within the same scene. After the voice work is completed, the actual animation process begins. Despite many modern animated shows transitioning primarily to digital processes, Family Guy has maintained its commitment to hand-drawn animation throughout its run. This traditional approach contributes to the show's distinctive visual style and aesthetic consistency across its many seasons, but it also explains that extensive 10-month production timeline. The animation process involves several steps. First, there's the rough animation, where animators create the basic movement and timing. Then there's cleanup, where those rough drawings are refined into the clean lines viewers see on screen. After that comes color, where each frame is painted with the show's distinctive color palette. Then there's compositing, where all the different elements, the characters, the backgrounds, any special effects are combined into complete frames. Finally, there's editing and post-production, where the audio is synced up perfectly with the animation, sound effects are added, and the episode is finalized. When you watch a Family Guy episode and see how fluidly the characters move, how perfectly their mouth movements sync with the dialogue, how seamlessly the cutaway gags transition in and out, you're seeing the result of hundreds of hours of painstaking work by skilled artists and animators. The show's distinctive humor relies heavily on what are called cutaway gags. those brief tangential segments that interrupt the main story to show some absurd scenario, usually referencing pop culture or presenting an exaggerated situation. These cutaways have become one of Family Guy's most recognizable trademarks, though they've also drawn criticism from some viewers and critics who feel they disrupt narrative flow. The cutaways typically begin with a character saying something like, "This is worse than that time I," or "Remember when I," and then the scene cuts away to show the referenced situation. These gags can range from a few seconds to over a minute in length, and they cover everything from obscure historical references to current pop culture to completely absurd fictional scenarios. The cutaway gag format allows Family Guy writers incredible freedom. They can make jokes about virtually anything without having to organically work it into the main plot. They think of a funny sketch about a ridiculous superhero, or a parody of a 1980s commercial, or an absurd take on a historical event. They can just throw it in as a cutaway without worrying about how it connects to Peter's storyline or Stewie's plot. This freedom has resulted in some of the show's most memorable moments, but it's also been criticized as a crutch, a way to fill time with random jokes, rather than focusing on character development or coherent storytelling. South Park famously parodied Family Guy's use of cutaway gags in their episodes Cartoon Wars, portraying the Family Guy writers as manatees randomly selecting idea balls to create jokes, suggesting that the show's humor is random and requires no creativity or skill. Speaking of South Park, the relationship between Family Guy and South Park has been complex and sometimes contentious. Trey Parker and Matt Stone, South Park's creators, have been openly critical of Family Guy on multiple occasions, and they've incorporated that criticism directly into their show. Beyond Cartoon Wars, they've made other episodes that take shots at Family Guy's humor and structure. Seth MacFarlane has generally taken the high road in response, occasionally making gentle jokes about South Park and Family Guy, but never engaging in the same level of direct attack. The reality is that both shows have been successful, both have passionate fan bases, and both have influenced animated comedy in their own ways. The comparison to The Simpsons is inevitable and constant. The Simpsons premiered in 1989, a full decade before Family Guy, and it essentially created the template for primetime animated sitcoms. Family Guy owes a clear debt to The Simpsons, from its family-centered structure to its satire of American culture to its willingness to push boundaries. However, Family Guy has always had a somewhat different approach to humor. While The Simpsons typically keeps its comedy within the framework of the story, using the world of Springfield and its characters to generate humor, Family Guy is willing to break away from its narrative at any moment for a quick joke. The Simpsons tends toward satirical commentary with heart, while Family Guy leans into shock value and absurdist humor. Both approaches have their merits and their fans. In 2014, Family Guy and The Simpsons did something unprecedented. They crossed over in an episode titled The Simpsons Guy. In the episode, the Griffin family finds themselves in Springfield, where they befriend The Simpsons until a dispute arises over beer. The episode features an extended fight sequence between Peter Griffin and Homer Simpson that showcases their similarities and differences. The crossover was a major television event, heavily promoted and highly rated. It represented a moment where these two titans of animated comedy acknowledged each other directly. And while there were inevitably some fans who felt the episode didn't quite work or that their favorite show was portrayed poorly, it was overall a successful and entertaining meeting of two television institutions. Family Guy has produced 3 Star Wars parody specials that have become beloved by fans. Blue Harvest aired in 2007 and parodied the original Star Wars film, Something, Something, Something. Darkside followed in 2009, parodying The Empire Strikes Back, and It's a Trap completed the trilogy in 2010 with a parody of Return of the Jedi. These specials feature the Family Guy characters playing the roles of Star Wars characters, with Peter as Han Solo, Chris as Luke Skywalker, Lois as Princess Leia, Brian and Stewie as Chewbacca and Darth Vader respectively, and so on. The specials are filled with both affectionate homages to the source material and the kind of irreverent humor Family Guy is known for. They've been released on DVD and have become perennial favorites, demonstrating that Family Guy can sustain longer-form storytelling when built around a strong concept. The Road to episodes are another beloved Family Guy tradition. These episodes are parodies of the Road to Comedy films starring Bing Crosby and Bob Hope from the 1940s and 50s. In Family Guy's version, Stewie and Brian travel to various locations, both real and fictional, getting into adventures that typically involve elaborate musical numbers and increasingly absurd situations. The first Road To episode, titled Road to Rhode Island, aired in May 2000 during the second season. Since then, there have been numerous Road To episodes, including Road to Europe, Road to Rupert, Road to Germany, Road to the Multiverse, Road to the North Pole, and several others. These episodes have become showcases for the show's ability to craft elaborate musical numbers and to develop the friendship between Stewie and Brian, which has become one of the show's emotional cores. The music in Family Guy deserves special attention. Composer Walter Murphy has created original music for the show since its inception, and his contributions have been crucial to its success. Family Guy is known for its musical numbers, which can range from short snippets to full Broadway-style productions. These numbers are often parodies of famous songs or musical styles, but they're also original compositions that advance the plot or develop character. Murphy's work has earned him multiple Emmy nominations and awards alongside MacFarlane. The show's willingness to break into song at unexpected moments has become part of its identity, and it's a tradition that stems directly from Seth MacFarlane's own love of musical theater and classic Hollywood musicals. Seth MacFarlane himself is an accomplished singer, having released multiple albums in the style of classic crooners like Frank Sinatra. His albums, including Music is Better Than Words, Holiday for Swing, No One Ever Tells You, and In Full Swing, among others, showcase his genuine vocal talent and his deep appreciation for the Great American Songbook. This musical background informs the way music is used in Family Guy, not just as comedy, but as genuine musical entertainment. MacFarlane has performed at prestigious venues like Carnegie Hall and the Royal Albert Hall, and he's received Grammy nominations for his musical work. Family Guy has faced numerous controversies over its 20-plus year run. The show's willingness to push boundaries and tackle sensitive subjects has led to criticism from various groups, legal challenges, and even episodes being banned from airing. The Parents Television Council, a conservative media watchdog group, has been one of Family Guy's most vocal critics since the show's inception. The PTC has declared Family Guy the worst TV show of the week on at least 40 different occasions. They've criticized the show for its sexual content, violence, and treatment of sensitive subjects, and they've filed numerous complaints with the Federal Communications Commission. In May 2000, the PTC even launched a letter-writing campaign to Fox, attempting to persuade the network to cancel Family Guy. This was after the show returned from its hiatus during the second season. The PTC claimed the campaign was motivated by strong advertiser resistance and low ratings, though Family Guy's subsequent success would prove those claims to be somewhat premature. The PTC has also targeted advertisers, asking companies like Wrigley and Burger King to stop running commercials during Family Guy because their products appeal to children, and the PTC argued that the show's content was inappropriate for young viewers. Interestingly, there's a bit of irony in the PTC's relationship with Family Guy. The show has mocked the organization multiple times, most notably in the fourth season episode PTV, which satirizes the FCC and censorship in television. In that episode, Peter starts his own uncensored television network after becoming frustrated with FCC regulations. The episode was nominated for an Emmy and has become one of the show's most celebrated episodes, even as it directly antagonizes the very organization that had spent years trying to get the show canceled. PTV has a fascinating behind-the-scenes story. The episode was written by Alex Sulkin and Wellesley Wild and directed by Dan Povenmire. It was a direct response to the FCC's increased regulations following the Super Bowl 38 halftime show controversy, where Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction led to a massive regulatory crackdown on broadcast content. MacFarlane and the Family Guy writing staff were frustrated by the new restrictions, which they felt were overly restrictive and threatened creative freedom. They decided to make an episode directly addressing these concerns, and the result was PTV. The episode contains a montage sequence showcasing some of the show's most controversial moments from previous seasons, scenes that had been cut by Fox's internal censors. The writers saw this as an opportunity to not only comment on censorship, but also to show viewers what they had been missing. Interestingly, even while making an episode criticizing censorship, the Family Guy team had to negotiate with Fox about what content would be allowed. Peter Shin, the supervising director, later recalled that they ended up horse trading with Fox, removing some content in exchange for being allowed to keep other material. The opening sequence, which features Peter and Lois discovering they can have uncensored sex because the FCC isn't watching them, was added after the producers discovered the episode ran 3 minutes short. This sequence has become one of the show's most talked about moments. Family Guy has had several episodes that were banned or significantly censored. The most famous banned episode is probably Partial Terms of Endearment from season 8. In this episode, Lois agrees to be a surrogate for an old college friend and her husband. However, after Lois becomes pregnant, the biological parents are killed in a car accident, leaving her to decide whether to continue the pregnancy or have an abortion. The episode was written by Danny Smith and directed by Joseph Lee, and it was scheduled to be the season 8 finale. However, Fox made the decision not to air the episode in the United States due to concerns about its handling of abortion, a topic that remains highly controversial and politically charged. The decision was announced at San Diego Comic-Con in 2009, before season 8 even premiered. Kevin Riley, the president of Fox Entertainment at the time, explained that the decision was partly financial. He said, "Of all the issues, this is the one that seems to be the most of a hot button. Particularly at that moment in time, the economy was really struggling, and there were a lot of very tough conversations going on with clients." Essentially, Fox was concerned that advertisers would pull out of the episode or the show entirely if it aired an episode dealing with abortion, and they felt the financial risk wasn't worth it. What makes this particularly interesting is that Partial Terms of Endearment actually received positive reviews from critics who saw it. The episode was shown at Comic-Con and was later released on DVD, and most critics felt it handled the subject of abortion in a relatively balanced way, presenting both pro-choice and pro-life perspectives through Peter and Lois's debate. The episode even aired on BBC Three in the United Kingdom in June 2010, where it was watched by nearly 1 million viewers and received positive reception. But in the United States, the episode has never aired on television and isn't available on streaming services like Hulu, making it one of the few Family Guy episodes that American viewers literally cannot watch without purchasing the DVD. Another controversial episode is When You Wish Upon a Weinstein from season 3. This episode was originally scheduled to air in 2000, but Fox pulled it at the last minute due to concerns that it could be perceived as anti-Semitic. In the episode, Peter decides that Chris needs a Jewish friend because, in Peter's ignorant view, Jewish people are inherently smarter and better with money. He even sings a song called I Need a Jew, set to the melody of When You Wish Upon a Star. Fox executives were concerned that the episode's portrayal of Jewish stereotypes, even if done satirically, could generate significant backlash. The episode eventually aired on Adult Swim in 2003, and then Fox finally aired it in 2004, years after it was originally produced. Unlike Partial Terms of Endearment, When You Wish Upon a Weinstein did eventually make it to Fox's airwaves, though its delayed release meant it aired out of order, which confused some viewers. The episode also led to a lawsuit from the Bourne Company, which owned the rights to When You Wish Upon a Star. The Bourne Company argued that Family Guy's parody song violated their copyright. However, in March 2009, U.S. District Judge Deborah Batts ruled in favor of Family Guy, determining that the show did not infringe on the copyright when it transformed the song for comical use. This was an important legal victory for parody and fair use in entertainment. A more recent controversial episode is Turban Cowboy from season 11. This episode, which aired on March 17, 2013, contained a cutaway gag showing Peter plowing through runners at the Boston Marathon with his car. The scene was dark humor typical of Family Guy, showing Peter committing mass murder in a ridiculous scenario. However, the episode aired about a month before the actual Boston Marathon bombing on April 15, 2013, a terrorist attack that killed 3 people and injured hundreds more. After the bombing, the episode's cutaway gag suddenly seemed horrifyingly prescient and in extremely poor taste. Fox immediately pulled the episode from Fox.com and Hulu. The network stated it had no immediate plans to air the episode again, though it did eventually return to rotation years later. What made the situation even more complicated was that fake screenshots and videos began circulating online, allegedly showing Family Guy predicting the Boston Marathon bombing in greater detail than what actually appeared in the episode. These fake videos combined footage from Turban Cowboy with footage from a different Family Guy episode, creating the false impression that the show had somehow predicted the terrorist attack with eerie specificity. Seth MacFarlane had to publicly address the hoax, explaining what had actually aired in the episode and condemning the fake videos that were manipulating Family Guy content to spread misinformation. Beyond these major controversies, Family Guy has faced numerous smaller censorship issues over the years. Certain jokes have been cut from broadcast versions and included only on DVD releases. The show regularly has to navigate what can and cannot be said on broadcast television, and the line has shifted over the years. Language that was absolutely forbidden in the early seasons has become more acceptable, while certain types of content have become more restricted. The show has had to blur certain images, bleep certain words, and cut certain scenes depending on where and when the episode is airing. Family Guy has also faced legal challenges beyond copyright issues. In 2007, comedian and actress Carol Burnett filed a lawsuit against the show for copyright infringement. The lawsuit concerned an episode that featured a pornographic video titled Carol Burnett Sucks, showing a character resembling Burnett's famous Charwoman character from The Carol Burnett Show. Burnett argued that the show had used her copyrighted character without permission and had portrayed her in an offensive manner. The case went to court, and while there were initially mixed rulings, it was ultimately settled out of court with undisclosed terms. In another legal case, actor Art Metrano filed a lawsuit in 2007 regarding a scene in Stewie Griffin, The Untold Story, the direct-to-DVD Family Guy movie. The scene showed Jesus performing Metrano's signature magic act, which involved absurd faux magical hand gestures while humming the tune Fine and Dandy. Metrano claimed that this performance was protected under copyright law. Fox moved to dismiss the case, but a federal judge initially ruled that several fair use factors counted in Metrano's favor, allowing the case to proceed. The case was eventually settled out of court in 2010 with undisclosed terms, but it highlighted the legal tightrope that shows like Family Guy walk when parodying real people and their work. The evolution of Family Guy's characters over 20-plus seasons is fascinating to track. In the early seasons, the characters were somewhat more grounded and relatable. Peter was foolish and made bad decisions, but there was a sweetness to him. He genuinely loved his family, and his actions, while misguided, usually came from good intentions. Over time, particularly after the show's revival in Season 4, Peter's character has become increasingly cartoonish and, some would argue, more cruel. He's committed genuinely terrible acts, shown shocking disregard for other people, and behaved in ways that are difficult to reconcile with the loving father figure from the early seasons. This change isn't unique to Peter. Lois has gone from a patient, understanding wife to someone who is sometimes just as selfish and cruel as Peter. She's had affairs, lied extensively, and shown remarkably poor judgment. Brian, who was originally portrayed as the voice of reason in the Griffin household, has been revealed over time to be a pretentious hypocrite, a failed writer who uses big words to mask his own insecurities and failures. His romantic relationships have become increasingly creepy, and the show has repeatedly highlighted his worst qualities. Meg's treatment by her family has become increasingly harsh over the seasons. In early episodes, while Meg was certainly the butt of jokes, she was still treated as a legitimate member of the family. As the show progressed, the abuse directed at Meg intensified dramatically. She's been told repeatedly that her family hates her. She's been physically assaulted by family members, and in general, she's treated with a cruelty that goes beyond typical sibling rivalry or teenage angst. Some fans find this running gag funny, others find it uncomfortable, and there's been ongoing debate about whether the show has taken the joke too far. Chris has remained relatively consistent in his characterization, generally portrayed as a dim but sweet kid who resembles his father in most ways. His character has perhaps changed the least over the show's run. He's discovered some talents, like his artistic ability, and has had various romantic interests and friendships, but his basic personality has stayed intact. Stewie's evolution is perhaps the most dramatic of any character. As mentioned earlier, Stewie began as a genuinely evil character obsessed with matricide and world domination. He built death rays, created sophisticated plans, and spoke with casual violence about his intentions. This version of Stewie was funny because of the dissonance between his infantile appearance and his adult vocabulary and violent intentions. However, this characterization was inherently limited. How many episodes can you do about a baby trying to kill his mother before the joke gets old? The writers recognized this and began shifting Stewie's character. The turning point is often cited as the two-part episode Stewie Kills Lois and Lois Kills Stewie from Season 6. In these episodes, Stewie finally succeeds in killing Lois and embarks on a campaign of violence and domination. However, the entire storyline turns out to be a computer simulation, a story that Stewie was exploring to see what would happen if he actually followed through on his plans. The simulation ends badly for Stewie, who is ultimately killed by Peter. This experience seems to make Stewie reconsider his goals, and from this point forward, his murderous tendencies and world domination schemes largely disappeared. Modern Stewie is more of an eccentric genius, focused on inventing things, time travel adventures with Brian, and exploring his own identity, particularly his sexuality, which has become an increasingly prominent aspect of his character. This version of Stewie has allowed for different types of stories, particularly the Road to episodes that focus on his friendship with Brian. However, some longtime fans miss the evil genius baby, feeling that softening Stewie has made the show less edgy and unpredictable. The supporting characters in Family Guy are numerous and colorful, each adding their own flavor to the show's universe. Glenn Quagmire, voiced by Seth MacFarlane, is the Griffin's sex-obsessed neighbor. Quagmire is an airline pilot whose defining characteristic is his insatiable libido. His catchphrase "giggity" has become one of the show's most recognizable and quotable lines. Quagmire's character is controversial, as his behavior often crosses into sexual predation, and his attitudes toward women are deeply problematic. The show has occasionally acknowledged this, particularly in episodes where other characters express disgust at Quagmire's actions, but he remains a regular presence and is generally portrayed as one of Peter's best friends. Joe Swanson, voiced by Patrick Warburton, is another of Peter's close friends. Joe is a police officer who is paraplegic, using a wheelchair after an accident. His character is defined by his determination to live life fully despite his disability, though this determination sometimes manifests as overcompensation. Joe is married to Bonnie Swanson, and their relationship has its own complexities. Bonnie was pregnant for 7 years of the show's run before finally giving birth, a running joke about the sliding timeline of animated sitcoms. Joe's character has allowed the show to make jokes about disability, some of which have been criticized as insensitive, though Joe himself is portrayed as a capable, competent character who doesn't want to be treated differently because of his wheelchair. Cleveland Brown was originally one of Peter's best friends, appearing regularly throughout the show. Voiced by Mike Henry, Cleveland was characterized by his slow, deliberate speech and calm demeanor, serving as a contrast to Peter's manic energy and Quagmire's sexual obsession. In 2009, Cleveland was given his own spin-off show, The Cleveland Show, which focused on Cleveland and his new family in the town of Steuben, Virginia. The show ran for 4 seasons and 88 episodes before being canceled in 2013. After The Cleveland Show ended, Cleveland returned to Family Guy as a regular character. In 2020, in the wake of increased awareness about racial issues and representation, Mike Henry announced that he would be stepping down from voicing Cleveland, stating that he felt a black actor should voice the character. Arif Zahur was cast as the new voice of Cleveland, starting in season 19. Recurring characters from Peter's workplace have provided many storylines over the years. When the show began, Peter worked at the Happy-Go-Lucky toy factory, where his boss, Mr. Weed, was a frequent presence. Mr. Weed died in season 3, choking on a dinner roll in a scene that parodied a death from the movie Jurassic Park, complete with identical shot composition and staging. After losing his job at the toy factory, Peter went through various employment situations before eventually landing at the Pawtucket Brewery, where he has worked for most of the series. His boss at the brewery is Angela, a neurotic germaphobe who has been involved in various storylines with Peter. Mayor Adam West, voiced by the legendary Adam West himself, was one of the show's most beloved recurring characters. The character was a surreal, delusional politician whose bizarre behavior and disconnected from reality statements provided countless comedic moments. Adam West, who played Batman in the 1960s television series, clearly enjoyed playing this fictionalized version of himself and brought genuine charm to the role. When West died in June 2017 at the age of 88, Family Guy had to address the loss both behind the scenes and in the show itself. The character of Mayor Adam West was killed off in the show, with an episode titled Adam West High, serving as a tribute to both the character and the actor. Tom Tucker and Diane Simmons served as the news anchors of Quahog's Channel 5 News, providing exposition and commentary on events in the town. Tucker, voiced by Seth MacFarlane, is a vain, self-centered news anchor, while Simmons, voiced by Lori Allen, was his long-suffering co-anchor. Diane Simmons was revealed to be a murderer in the Season 9 premiere And Then There Were Fewer, a murder mystery episode that parodied Agatha Christie novels. In that episode, Diane was killed by Stewie, marking a rare instance where a recurring character was permanently killed off. The Pewterschmidt family provides another layer of characters and storylines. Lois comes from the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, and her father Carter Pewterschmidt, voiced by Seth MacFarlane, is a billionaire industrialist who looks down on Peter and is frequently involved in schemes and business deals. Lois's mother, Barbara Pewterschmidt, voiced by Alex Borstein, is more accepting of Peter, but still carries herself with the aristocratic air of old money. The class difference between Peter's blue-collar background and Lois's upper-class upbringing has been a source of conflict and comedy throughout the series. The show has featured countless celebrity guest stars over the years, lending their voices to various characters. Some appear as themselves, while others voice fictional characters. The list of guest stars reads like a who's who of Hollywood, including actors, musicians, athletes, politicians, and other public figures. Some notable guest appearances include Adam West as Mayor Adam West, Carrie Fisher as Peter's boss, Angela, Drew Barrymore as Jillian, Brian's girlfriend for several seasons, Patrick Stewart as Susie Swanson, the inner voice of Joe and Bonnie's baby daughter, James Woods as himself in multiple episodes, including a running storyline about James Woods Regional High School, and literally hundreds of others. The show's animation style has remained relatively consistent over its run, though there have been subtle evolutions. The character designs are fairly simple and iconic, with distinctive visual markers for each character. Peter has his signature double chin and rotund body shape. Lois has her red hair and model-thin figure that seems biologically impossible, given that she's given birth to 3 children and apparently never exercises. Meg has her pink beanie and glasses. Chris resembles a younger, slightly thinner Peter. Stewie has his football-shaped head and is typically dressed in his red overalls and yellow shirt. Brian walks on his hind legs and is usually dressed only in a collar, though he sometimes wears clothes for specific situations. The backgrounds and settings in Family Guy have their own consistency. The Griffin House has a distinctive layout that has been maintained throughout the series, though the interior occasionally changes to serve specific jokes or storylines. The living room is where the family often gathers, with the television being a focal point. The kitchen features a large table where family dinners and conversations take place. Upstairs, there are bedrooms for each family member, including Stewie's room with his various inventions and contraptions. The Drunken Clam, the bar where Peter and his friends hang out, has its own familiar layout, with the booth where they typically sit. Quahog, Rhode Island, the show's fictional setting, has developed its own geography and cast of locations over the years. There's the Pawtucket Brewery, where Peter works, the high school that Meg and Chris attend, which was originally called James Woods Regional High School before being renamed Adam West High School after Mayor West's death, the Quahog Mall, various restaurants and businesses, and distinctive neighborhoods, including Spooner Street, where the Griffins live. The town has become as much a character as the people who inhabit it, with its own personality and quirks. Family Guy's production company, Fuzzy Door Productions, has an interesting origin story. The company was founded by Seth MacFarlane, and its name comes from a fuzzy leopard skin print that was stapled to MacFarlane's dorm room door during his college years at RISD. This small personal detail, becoming the name of his production company, is representative of how MacFarlane has maintained personal touches and references throughout his work. Fuzzy Door Productions has gone on to produce not only Family Guy, but also American Dad, The Cleveland Show, and other projects. Speaking of other projects, Seth MacFarlane's work extends far beyond Family Guy. He co-created American Dad, alongside Mike Barker and Matt Weitzman. The show premiered on Fox in 2005 and has since moved to TBS. American Dad focuses on Stan Smith, an ultra-patriotic CIA agent, voiced by MacFarlane, who lives with his liberal daughter Haley, voiced by MacFarlane's sister Rachel, his dorky son Steve, his wife Francine, and Roger, an alien who lives with the family. The show has developed its own identity, separate from Family Guy, with less reliance on cutaway gags and more focus on sci-fi elements and Roger's various personas. The Cleveland Show, which ran from 2009 to 2013, followed Cleveland Brown after he moved to Steuben, Bend, Virginia, and married Donna Tubbs, a woman he'd previously dated in high school. The show introduced Cleveland's stepchildren and explored his new life, though it never achieved the same level of success as Family Guy or American Dad. After its cancellation, Cleveland returned to Quahog and to his regular role in Family Guy. Beyond animation, MacFarlane directed and starred in the live-action comedy films Ted in 2012 and Ted 2 in 2015. The films feature Mark Wahlberg as a man whose childhood teddy bear, brought to life by a magical wish, grows up to be a crude, marijuana-smoking companion. MacFarlane provided the voice for Ted, and the films were major commercial successes. He also directed and starred in A Million Ways to Die in the West in 2014, a comedy western that received mixed reviews but showcased MacFarlane's love for classic Hollywood genres. MacFarlane created The Orville, a science fiction series that premiered in 2017. The show is a sincere homage to Star Trek, particularly Star Trek The Next Generation, and MacFarlane stars as Captain Ed Mercer of the USS Orville. Unlike his animated comedies, The Orville is a more straightforward drama with comedic elements, demonstrating MacFarlane's range as a creator and his genuine love for science fiction. The financial success of Family Guy has been extraordinary. Beyond the advertising revenue from broadcasts and the fees Fox pays for production, the show has generated massive income through DVD sales, streaming deals, and merchandise. As mentioned earlier, the DVD sales of the canceled seasons were instrumental in bringing the show back to life. The show has been licensed to various streaming services over the years, with each deal worth tens of millions of dollars. Currently, Family Guy streams on Hulu, which has become the show's streaming home for viewers in the United States. Merchandise has been another major revenue stream. Family Guy action figures, clothing, video games, board games, books, and countless other products have been produced over the years. In 2006, a Family Guy video game was released for PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PlayStation Portable. The game allowed players to control Peter, Brian, and Stewie in various scenarios based on the show. While the game received mixed reviews, it was commercially successful and demonstrated the breadth of the Family Guy brand. In 2005, Family Guy released a straight-to-DVD movie titled Stewie Griffin: The Untold Story. The movie was later edited and broadcast as 3 separate episodes on Fox. The story focuses on Stewie traveling into the future and discovering what his life will be like as an adult, leading to various revelations and adventures. The DVD was a major seller, and the theatrical-style release demonstrated that Family Guy could sustain a feature-length narrative. The show has received numerous awards and nominations over its run. Family Guy has been nominated for 27 Primetime Emmy Awards, winning 8. Seth MacFarlane won the Emmy for Outstanding Voiceover Performance for his role as Stewie. The show won the Emmy for Outstanding Music and Lyrics for the song You Got a Lot to See from the episode Brian Wallows and Peter's Swallows. Individual animators have won Emmys for their work on specific episodes, including Stephen Fonte for his storyboard work on No Chris Left Behind, and Greg Colton for his work on Road to the Multiverse. In 2009, Family Guy was nominated for the Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series, becoming the first animated show to receive this nomination since The Flintstones in 1961. While Family Guy didn't win, the nomination itself was historic and represented recognition that animated series could compete with live-action shows in terms of quality and impact. The Simpsons had come close to receiving this nomination in 1993, but ultimately was not nominated. making Family Guy's achievement even more significant. The show has also been nominated for and won multiple Annie Awards, which are specifically for achievement in animation. It's won 3 Annie Awards, twice in 2006 and once in 2008. These awards recognize the technical skill and artistry of the animators who bring Family Guy to life. Family Guy's influence on popular culture cannot be overstated. Phrases from the show have entered the common vernacular. People say giggity when they're making an innuendo. The phrase, "Oh my God, who the hell cares?" from a Peter Griffin rant has become a popular reaction. Roadhouse, Peter's random non sequitur, is recognized even by people who have never seen the Patrick Swayze film it references. The chicken fights, extended sequences where Peter battles a giant chicken named Ernie, have become iconic examples of the show's absurdist humor and willingness to devote significant time to elaborate visual gags. The show has been referenced and parodied in countless other media. Other animated shows, live-action sitcoms, movies, and even news programs have made Family Guy references. The show's impact on animated comedy specifically has been substantial. Many animated shows that have premiered since Family Guy's revival have incorporated elements that Family Guy popularized or perfected, from cutaway gags to musical numbers to irreverent humor that pushes boundaries. Seth MacFarlane has been open about his political views and causes he supports. He's an outspoken advocate for gay rights, atheism, and has supported various progressive political causes and candidates. These views often come through in Family Guy, particularly through the character of Brian, who frequently espouses liberal political positions. However, the show doesn't shy away from mocking liberal positions and personalities either. The show has targeted both sides of the political spectrum at various times, though conservative groups have tended to be more vocal in their criticism of the show. MacFarlane narrowly avoided death in one of history's most tragic events. He was scheduled to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11th, 2001, the flight that was hijacked and flown into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. However, MacFarlane missed the flight due to a combination of a hangover and his travel agent giving him the wrong departure time. He arrived at the airport about 10 minutes after the plane had departed. MacFarlane has spoken about this experience in interviews, discussing how it affected his perspective on life and fate. He's stated that he doesn't dwell on what could have happened, and that he believes fate decides when someone dies. And if he was meant to die that day, he would have made that flight somehow. This near-death experience hasn't led MacFarlane to dramatically change his approach to life or work. He's continued to create provocative, boundary-pushing content, though he has spoken about how the experience gave him perspective on what's truly important. The fact that the creator of one of television's most successful shows almost died before that success ever happened is a sobering reminder of how much life can change based on seemingly small decisions or accidents of timing. Family Guy's writing staff has included numerous talented writers who have gone on to successful careers. Many former Family Guy writers have moved on to create their own shows, write for major films, or take on other prestigious projects. For example, David A. Goodman, who was an executive producer and writer for Family Guy, went on to work on shows like Star Trek, Enterprise, and The Orville. Mike Henry, who voiced Cleveland and other characters, was also a writer and producer on the show before stepping away from voicing Cleveland. The writer's room for Family Guy is known for being a collaborative environment, though Seth MacFarlane ultimately has final say on creative decisions. The room is where episodes are broken down, jokes are pitched, and storylines are developed. MacFarlane stopped writing individual scripts for Family Guy after 2010, choosing instead to focus on overseeing production and providing voices. This doesn't mean he's not involved in the creative process. He still attends table reads, provides input on scripts, and guides the show's overall direction, but he's entrusted the day-to-day writing to his team of writers. Interestingly, during the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike, MacFarlane and the other showrunners temporarily left Family Guy, along with writers from other shows, in solidarity with the striking writers. MacFarlane has always been supportive of writers' rights, dating back to the 2007-2008 writers' strike, when Family Guy production was affected. During the 2023 strike, MacFarlane went even further, donating $1 million to the Entertainment Community Fund to support film and television workers during the strikes. This generous donation demonstrated his commitment to the people who work in the industry and his recognition that strikes, while necessary for workers' rights, create financial hardship for many people. The animation process for Family Guy involves studios in multiple locations. While the core production team is based in Los Angeles, some of the animation work is done overseas, a common practice in the animation industry to manage costs. The show uses digital tools for many aspects of production, but as mentioned earlier, it has maintained a commitment to hand-drawn animation for the actual character animation. This hybrid approach allows the show to maintain its distinctive visual style while taking advantage of digital tools for efficiency in certain areas. Voice recording sessions for Family Guy have their own unique dynamics. Sometimes the actors record together, which can create better chemistry and timing for dialogue exchanges. Other times, actors record separately, which gives the director more control over individual performances, but can make it harder to capture natural conversational rhythm. Seth MacFarlane's unique position of voicing multiple main characters means his recording sessions can be particularly complex, sometimes requiring him to essentially have conversations with himself as he switches between Peter and Brian or Stewie and Quagmire. The show has had to navigate changing television landscapes over its more than 2-decade run. When Family Guy premiered in 1999, people watched television on scheduled times. If you missed an episode, you either had to wait for a rerun or miss it entirely, unless you recorded it on VHS. The rise of DVR technology changed this somewhat, allowing viewers to record and watch shows on their own schedules. Then, streaming services fundamentally altered how people consume television. Now, viewers can watch entire seasons of Family Guy at once, binge-watching episodes back-to-back in ways that weren't possible or common when the show first aired. This change in viewing habits has affected how the show is structured and how it tells stories. In the early days of television, shows had to worry about viewers tuning in each week and potentially missing episodes, so each episode needed to be relatively self-contained. Now, with streaming, viewers can easily watch episodes in order and catch references or ongoing storylines. However, Family Guy has generally maintained its episodic structure, with most episodes standing alone rather than featuring continuing storylines. This approach makes the show accessible to casual viewers who might tune in at random, but can also frustrate viewers who want to see more character development and continuing arcs. The show has featured several multi-episode storylines over the years. The Stewie kills Lois and Lois kills Stewie two-parter is one example. Road 2 episodes sometimes have callbacks to previous Road 2 adventures. The Season 6 premiere, Blue Harvest, led to the other Star Wars parodies, creating a loose trilogy. However, these multi-episode storylines remain the exception rather than the rule. Most Family Guy episodes can be watched in any order without confusion, which is both a strength and a limitation of the show's format. Family Guy has been released in numerous international markets, and in many countries, the show has been dubbed into local languages. The challenge of dubbing animation is finding voice actors who can match not only the tone and delivery of the original performances, but also sync their dialogue with the already animated mouth movements. Different countries have their own teams of voice actors who voice the characters, and these actors sometimes become celebrities in their own right within their countries for their work on Family Guy and other dubbed shows. The cultural references in Family Guy sometimes don't translate well internationally. A joke about an American pop culture figure or a reference to a specific American product might not land with viewers in other countries. The show has generally not tried to localize these references, preferring to maintain the American-centric humor that is part of its identity, even if it means some jokes don't work as well in international markets. Family Guy has spawned various specials and promotional material beyond the regular episodes. The show has done crossovers with other Fox shows beyond The Simpsons. There have been special behind-the-scenes features, anniversary specials, and retrospectives. In 2005, there was a special called Family Guy Presents, Seth and Alex's almost live comedy show, which featured Seth MacFarlane and Alex Borstein performing live musical numbers and comedy sketches, some in character and some as themselves. The special gave fans a glimpse of the talent behind the voices and demonstrated the genuine musical and comedic skills of the performers. The show's opening sequence has gone through several variations over the years, though the basic structure has remained consistent. The theme song, written and performed by Walter Murphy and Seth MacFarlane, sets the tone for each episode with its Broadway musical style. The visuals show the Griffin family in various situations, ending with them all sitting on the couch as the logo appears. In the early seasons, the opening was presented in a standard 4:3 aspect ratio. Later seasons, beginning with season 9, switched to widescreen, which required adjustments to the opening sequence and all other visual elements. Some episodes have featured special opening sequences tailored to specific episodes or events. The Road to episodes traditionally feature unique openings that riff on the standard sequence. Holiday episodes sometimes have special seasonal variations on the opening. These special openings reward regular viewers who notice the changes while maintaining enough of the familiar structure that they still feel like Family Guy. Family Guy has had various video game adaptations beyond the 2006 console game. There have been mobile games, online games, and appearances of Family Guy characters in crossover games like Multiversus, where Peter Griffin was added as a playable character in the fighting game. These games have varied widely in quality and commercial success, but they demonstrate the enduring marketability of the Family Guy brand. The show has published multiple books over the years. These books have taken various forms, from episode guides to coffee table books to comedy books featuring original content with the characters. Harper Adult has published several Family Guy-related books since 2005. While these books haven't been massive bestsellers on the level of the show's television success, they provide another avenue for fans to engage with the Family Guy universe. Trading cards, board games, and other physical merchandise have kept the brand present in retail spaces, even as digital entertainment has become more dominant. The persistence of Family Guy merchandise more than 20 years after the show premiered demonstrates both the show's staying power and the dedication of its fanbase. The show's presence on social media has helped maintain its relevance with younger audiences. Official Family Guy accounts on platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok regularly share clips, memes, and other content. These clips often go viral, introducing new viewers to the show and reminding longtime fans why they love it. The show's extensive back catalog of episodes provides an essentially endless supply of content to share on social media, with different clips resonating with audiences at different times. Behind the scenes, the production of Family Guy involves hundreds of people across multiple departments. Beyond the writers, voice actors, and animators, there are storyboard artists, sound engineers, editors, producers, and many others all contributing to each episode. The credits at the end of each episode scroll past quickly, but they represent the work of a small army of talented professionals. The show's longevity has meant that some crew members have worked on Family Guy for their entire professional careers, joining the show in the early 2000s and still being involved 2 decades later. This continuity of talent has helped maintain the show's quality and consistency, even as individual writers and other staff members have come and gone. Family Guy's production schedule operates on a timeline that's significantly ahead of air dates. Episodes airing in November or December were likely completed months earlier, possibly even earlier in the same year. This lead time is necessary because of the lengthy animation process, but it also means the show can rarely respond to current events or timely topics. By the time an episode airs, the news story or cultural moment that inspired it might be old news. This is one reason why Family Guy generally avoids topical humor in favor of more timeless comedy that doesn't rely on viewers understanding contemporary references. The financial investment in each episode of Family Guy is substantial. Animation is expensive, and a single episode can cost several $millions to produce. This high cost is why networks are so careful about which animated shows they greenlight, and why canceling a show like Family Guy after just a few seasons was such a significant decision. The fact that Family Guy was able to return after being canceled twice speaks to the show's ability to generate revenue that justified its production costs. MacFarlane's salary for Family Guy has been reported at various times, though exact current figures aren't public. At one point, he was earning approximately $200,000 per episode for his work on the show, which includes writing, producing, and voicing multiple characters. This might sound like an enormous amount of money, and it certainly is substantial, but it's important to remember that MacFarlane's work on Family Guy is not just showing up to record lines. He oversees the entire production, attends meetings, reviews animation, and is involved in essentially every aspect of the show. When you consider the massive revenue Family Guy generates through advertising, syndication, streaming deals, and merchandise, MacFarlane's compensation, while substantial, represents a relatively small percentage of the overall income the show produces. The business of television is complex, involving intricate negotiations between studios, networks, creators, actors, and various other parties. Family Guy is produced by 20th Television, which was formerly known as 20th Century Fox Television, before Disney's acquisition of Fox's entertainment assets in 2019. This means that technically, Family Guy is now a Disney property, which is somewhat ironic given the show's frequent crude humor and adult content, things not typically associated with the Disney brand. However, Disney has been careful to maintain clear separation between its family-friendly content and its more adult-oriented properties. Family Guy airs on Fox, which Disney does not own, having only purchased Fox's production studio, not the Fox broadcast network. This separation helps maintain the distinct identities of different brands even though they're connected through corporate ownership. The acquisition of 21st Century Fox by Disney for $71.3 billion was one of the largest media acquisitions in history, and it had massive implications across the entertainment industry. For Family Guy specifically, it meant a change in corporate ownership, but not necessarily a change in creative direction or how the show operates. Seth MacFarlane remains the creative force behind the show, and Fox remains the network that broadcasts it. However, Disney's ownership does mean that all Family Guy merchandise, streaming rights, and international distribution are now controlled by Disney, one of the largest and most powerful media companies in the world. This corporate ownership structure has interesting implications for the future. Disney has been consolidating its content on its Disney Plus streaming platform, but Family Guy, given its adult content, is not available on Disney Plus in the United States. Instead, it's available on Hulu, which Disney also owns and positions as its platform for more adult-oriented content. In international markets where Disney offers a Star Hub within Disney Plus for mature content, Family Guy is available there. This complex distribution strategy reflects the challenges of managing diverse content libraries with different target audiences. Family Guy has been renewed through season 24, with the announcement made in January 2023 that the show would continue through at least the 2024 to 2025 television season. Seth MacFarlane has indicated that he doesn't foresee the show ending anytime soon, and given its continued ratings success and cultural relevance, there's no reason to expect Fox would cancel it. The show has become an institution, a reliable ratings performer that generates consistent advertising revenue and helps define Fox's Sunday night animation block, alongside The Simpsons and Bob's Burgers. When Family Guy celebrated its 25th anniversary in January 2024, Seth MacFarlane reflected on the show's longevity in an interview with The Wrap. He expressed amazement at how much time had passed, saying he felt like he'd been running at full speed ever since the show premiered and hadn't really stopped to appreciate the milestone. He compared Family Guy to The Honeymooners, the classic sitcom that aired only 39 episodes in its original run, but remained culturally relevant and beloved decades later. MacFarlane explained that Jackie Gleason, when asked why The Honeymooners endured, simply said it was because the show was funny. MacFarlane believes the same is true for Family Guy, that at its core, the show's goal is simply to make people laugh, and when it succeeds at that goal, everything else follows. This straightforward philosophy, making people laugh, might seem simplistic for a show as complex and culturally significant as Family Guy, but it cuts to the heart of what makes the show work. All its controversies, its censorship battles, its awards, and its business success, Family Guy remains fundamentally a comedy. Its primary objective is to entertain viewers and make them laugh. Whether through absurdist cutaway gags, musical numbers, pop culture parodies, or character-based humor, the show aims to generate laughs. When it succeeds completely. When it fails, the failures are often spectacular and generate their own discussions and controversies. The show's writers continue to push boundaries and explore new territory even after hundreds of episodes. They've made episodes about every conceivable topic, parodied every genre of film and television, and explored every aspect of the Griffin family's lives. Finding new stories and new jokes after so many episodes is a genuine challenge, yet the show continues. Some episodes are better than others, which is inevitable with any long-running series, but the show maintains a baseline quality that keeps viewers coming back. The voice actors have aged alongside the show, their voices inevitably changing over more than 2 decades. Seth MacFarlane's voice for Peter, Stewie, and Brian sounds slightly different in Season 1 compared to Season 23, though the core characteristics remain consistent. Alex Borstein's Lois, Seth Green's Chris, Mila Kunis's Meg, all have evolved subtly over the years. These changes are gradual enough that viewers might not notice from episode to episode, but when comparing episodes from different eras of the show, the differences become apparent. The show has had to address the deaths of actors who voiced recurring characters. When Adam West died in 2017, the show wrote out Mayor Adam West and created a tribute episode. When Carrie Fisher died in late 2016, the show had to figure out how to handle her character Angela. Other voice actors who have passed away during the show's run have necessitated similar decisions about whether to retire characters, recast them, or write them out. Family Guy has influenced an entire generation of animators, writers, and comedy creators who grew up watching the show. Just as Seth MacFarlane was influenced by The Simpsons, All in the Family, and the Bing Crosby Bob Hope Road 2 movies, younger creators have been influenced by Family Guy. You can see Family Guy's influence in other animated comedies, from obvious things like cutaway gags and musical numbers to more subtle influences in pacing, character archetypes, and willingness to push boundaries. The show has become a part of people's lives in ways that go beyond simply watching television. Fans quote the show, share clips on social media, dress as characters for Halloween, and incorporate Family Guy references into their daily conversations. The show has become a shared cultural reference point, particularly for people who came of age in the 2000s and 2010s. When someone makes a Family Guy reference, they're not just making a joke, they're signaling membership in a community of people who share that cultural knowledge. The relationship between Family Guy and its critics remains complicated. Some critics have praised the show's creativity, musical prowess, and willingness to tackle controversial subjects. Others have criticized its reliance on shock value, its treatment of characters like Meg, its random humor that can feel disconnected from any coherent narrative, and its use of offensive jokes that can seem more mean-spirited than satirical. Both perspectives have validity. Family Guy is a show that simultaneously displays genuine creative ambition and thoughtlessness, that can craft beautiful musical numbers and crude throwaway jokes, that can develop touching character moments and then undercut them with randomness. This inconsistency is perhaps one reason the show remains interesting even after so many episodes. You never quite know what you're going to get. One episode might be a heartfelt exploration of Brian's relationship with his mother, while the next might be an extended parody of a Stephen King novel, while the one after that might be a random collection of disconnected jokes held together by the loosest of plots. This unpredictability can be frustrating for viewers who want consistency, but it also means the show rarely feels stale or predictable. As Family Guy continues into its 3rd decade on the air, questions about its eventual ending inevitably arise. Will the show continue indefinitely? Or will there be a planned final episode that provides closure to the Griffin family's story? Seth MacFarlane has indicated he doesn't have plans to end the show, but television is ultimately a business, and shows end when they're no longer financially viable, or when the creative team decides it's time. The Simpsons has now aired for over 35 seasons, and shows no signs of ending, suggesting that animated sitcoms can potentially run indefinitely as long as there's an audience and a network willing to broadcast them. If and when Family Guy does eventually end, it will mark the conclusion of one of television's most significant animated series. The show will leave behind a legacy of hundreds of episodes, countless memorable moments, and a permanent place in television history. Its influence on animated comedy is undeniable, and its cultural impact extends far beyond just entertainment. Family Guy has sparked conversations about censorship, free speech, the limits of comedy, and the role of satire in society. It's been at the center of political debates, legal battles, and moral panics. It's entertained millions of people across multiple generations and has become a part of the cultural landscape in ways that few shows ever achieve. The journey from Seth MacFarlane's college thesis film to one of television's longest-running animated series is remarkable. It's a story of creative vision, determination in the face of cancellation, and the power of finding and connecting with an audience. It's a story of taking risks, pushing boundaries, and refusing to compromise creative integrity, even when facing pressure from network executives, advertisers, and advocacy groups. It's a story of evolution, as both the show and its creator have grown and changed over more than 2 decades. Family Guy isn't just a television show. It's a phenomenon that has shaped animated comedy, influenced popular culture, and entertained viewers around the world. Whether you love it, hate it, or have a complicated relationship with it, there's no denying its significance. From its humble beginnings, airing after the Super Bowl, to its current status as a television institution, Family Guy has had an incredible journey. And with more seasons confirmed and no end in sight, that journey continues. Thanks for sticking with me through all 670 of these fascinating Family Guy facts. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Quahog and the Griffin family, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. There's so much more to explore about your favorite shows, and I can't wait to share more with you. Until next time, keep watching, keep laughing, and remember that somewhere out there, Peter Griffin is probably fighting that giant chicken again, and we're all better off for it.